Morning everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of the Licensing Committee. The fire alarm procedure. If the fire alarm is activated, please take the stairs down to the reception area and out of the building to the Green and Hawley Square, which is the assembly point. Please do not use the lifts. Officers will assist you and advise when it is deemed safe to return to the council offices. Filming of the meeting. Does anybody intend filming the meeting? No? Okay. Restriction of the use of mobile phones. Would everyone present please ensure that their mobile phones are turned silent and that they are not used to make or receive phone calls whilst the meeting is in progress. Apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence? I've got Councillor Dennis down.
Councillor Ara sent her apologies.
Councillor Ara. I've had apologies from Councillor Wing, and she said possibly Councillor, Abby Smith, may not be attending. It doesn't look like she's here. Have we had any other apologies? No? Okay. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Minutes of the last licensing board meeting. Please can I have a member propose and second that the minutes of the licensing board meeting held on the 14th of February 2023 be approved as a correct record. Councillor May Saunders proposed and Councillor...
There was a question on the last minutes that I looked up.
Oh, what was that one?
States in the last minutes, the board agreed that the item be deferred to the next meeting. It's to do with whether it can make this is a confidential item or not, what the decision that we took.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, there was a decision at the last meeting. So sorry, can you expand upon that?
The minutes said that, well, I didn't agree the minutes because there was I think that the decision that we took at the last meeting with the private hire vehicle driver wasn't confidential. So you were going to get a legal opinion on that?
Okay.
Thanks.
Have you done that?
Yeah, I've made a note of that and I'll look after that after this meeting, okay? Just want to get back to you.
Okay, agenda item 4, minutes of the last licensing subcommittee meeting. Please can I have a member propose and second that the minutes of the licensing board meeting held on the 23rd of February 2023 be approved as a correct record. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Curry and a seconder, Councillor Shrub.
Just to confirm, Councillor Huxley is the seconder for previous minutes.
She's not the seconder because she wants it basically reviewed. Changes to the driver's knowledge test. Please can I ask Miss Alison Brock, Technical Support Team Manager, to present the report.
Morning everyone. As you can see, it's quite a comprehensive report and there's information from the Thanet Private Hire Association in there as well, so I hope you've all had time to be able to read it all and digest it all. The Thanet Private Hire Association put in representations last November and arranged a meeting with Craig McKinley to discuss our current driver knowledge test because they feel that it's too difficult and there's not enough drivers passing it. They also don't necessarily see, especially for private hire drivers, they don't see the requirement for the local knowledge side of it mainly because they use sat-navs. As you can see there, last year there was quite a lot of drivers that didn't renew. Over 101 didn't bother renewing last year. last year as well, the government in April brought in the new tax regs, where when they renew their licence, they have to inform us and give us their tax code so that we know they're registered for tax. Some of my team spent a little while last week phoning some of these drivers who didn't renew, and various reasons. They'd retired, they'd moved out the area, it was too expensive with the circuit fee, the insurance, the petrol going up. And some of them also said that it was because of the tax, because a lot of them were doing it as a little bit of extra pocket money, and all of a sudden they were having to say they were doing it, you know, via the tax route. So there was a few that said that. As you know, with drivers, our main responsibility is the safety of the public. There's obviously, but yeah, you as board members have seen some of the drivers. You've had drivers before you recently with various driving issues or, you know, things they've done wrong. So, you know, we obviously have to make sure that everyone who wants to be a driver is a fit and proper person. And that there is, as it says there, a fit and proper person. Basically, would you allow a member of your family to get in a vehicle on their own with that person? We're more than happy to make any changes to the knowledge test that you see fit, you know, whether it's, I personally, at the moment, we have the knowledge test, which everyone has to do, and then we have a Hackney test, which once they've passed the knowledge test, if they want to be a Hackney driver, they have to do the extra 5 questions of A to B routes within the area. I would personally like to see it split a bit more so that there's a private hire test and there's a Hackney test. And then obviously the Hackney one can concentrate more on local knowledge or how to get from A to B, because obviously with a Hackney, they're different. You can just hire them in the street, you can just flag one down, you can just jump in it, you don't have to book it. So they don't always know when you get in that vehicle where you're going. And obviously with us being a tourist area, we do like the idea of local knowledge, because even with a private hire, if someone comes and picks you up from your hotel to take you to whatever restaurant or whatever you're going to, it's normal for people to chat. You chat to the driver, you might say, oh, I'm here for a week, you know, do you know where so-and-so is? Is there such and such I could go to? It's just what you do, isn't it, when you're in. So we do feel local knowledge is important.
But that's covered in the ambassador course, Alison.
We do feel that local knowledge is important. Obviously, the other issue we have with some of the courses that take place at the moment, especially the safeguarding one, it's an online course, but I could be sitting there doing that course, because there's no checks as to who's actually doing the course. You pay for the course, you get a link to the course, and then you log on and you just do it. But there's no checks, they don't know who's doing that course. Whereas the slightly more expensive one, the £25 one, it is done in a classroom. It's online still, but they can see who's doing it, and you have to show some form of ID. So they can, you know, they know that who's doing the test. So that's basically it, really. Over to you to fire us any questions. And
Councillor Pott.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your report. I have got a couple of thoughts. I totally agree with the online thing. I think you should be able to see who is actually sitting it, just as a safeguard. Secondly, is there any way of bringing in an international DBS check for drivers, because we have no knowledge of what's happened in their country? I've got no objection to any driver, but I think we have to have a DBS check, but it's only for this country. If they're from another country, I think it should be a stipulation, because with children we do need to safeguard. So is that possible? And lastly, for the moment, Is there another way that we can, I do agree that I think that the knowledge we have is very difficult, not just for foreign drivers, for English drivers too, for everyone across the board. I think it is a bit too difficult. But is there a way you can bring in another tier? I agree with you for Hackney, that is a really good idea. But is there a way you can bring in another tier for, say, for drivers that just want to do school runs, that can't necessarily want to become a taxi driver? Is there another way we can bring other people in on board that can do other jobs but not necessarily the full works? That's...
Thank you, Councillor Potts.
Yeah, we can do. Obviously, there are other authorities that do a licence just for somebody who may want to just do school runs. So that is something we can look into. And as for the international DBS, that isn't something we can do. We could put the onus on the applicant to do it or to provide us with something, but that isn't something we can do in this country. Oh, you just...
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor, I've just Googled it, and there is something on the gov.uk website which says that you can get a criminal record check for time spent abroad. So that could possibly be a possibility.
Councillor Potts, go on.
Yeah, I think going forward, because as we're talking about, you know, people doing school runs, I think it is very important to safeguard. And I think that should be something at the person's personal cost. If they want to do the job, fine, but they should have to provide us with a DBS from their own country. DBS.
Councillor Huxley?
Thanks, Chair. Could you just sort of do a synopsis, Alison, of what other local authorities are doing? So saying Kent. Sorry, I haven't had time to read it all. This bit. You know, are they doing what we're thinking of doing, or are they doing completely different things? Or
Yeah, it's on Annex C. If you look at some of them, I mean, you know, you could say we're quite behind in what we do. You've got some of the others who make them do an actual taxi driving assessment course, which, you know, ranges from £70 to £90. That obviously puts a lot more cost on the whole process. There's quite a few do that. As you can see, there's quite a few that they still have their written knowledge tests. They've got all sorts of various bits within it. They all charge different fees. Everybody does something different, which isn't ideal. It would be handy if the government said, or Department of Transport or someone said, this is the test, this is what you've got to do, these are the bits you've got to add in it. But at the moment, every council can do whatever they want, which isn't helpful.
Councillor Curry?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I do feel with the advancement with cab technology, sat-navs, the knowledge test does have to be looked at. I don't think the drivers these days need an extensive knowledge of the local area, but as you say, with the Hackney cabs, it's different, and a tourist section of the knowledge test would be a good idea. I'd also like to hear your views on there's been some support for a practical test where a driver would accompany and look at driving knowledge of highway code, English and maths, and encompassing all that into one practical test. What's your views on that?
Do you mean an in-house
I think it would be
course?
Yeah, it would be with an officer who would accompany.
Yeah, I mean, if that was the route you want to go down, it would mean employing someone else.
Yeah.
Because they would have to go on various courses, especially with things like safeguarding and that. You've got train the trainer, you've got all sorts of courses they'd have to go on. It would probably be as you can see with some of the other authorities, it would probably be a 5 to 6 hour course that they would obviously have to come in and do. And then at the end of it, a short exam, still a short test. As for the driving side of it, that's a bit more specialist. Again, you could send drivers for a driving exam with one of the blue lamp or the green penny. There's all of those alternatives. But of course, that puts a lot, would put a lot more on the cost of the whole thing. If we did do some sort of in-house training, again, driving assessment, like last week, most weeks we're getting, on average, 20 candidates because we have to obviously space them out and it depends on room availability. So if you've got somebody having to test 20 odd people on their driving ability, it's, it would be a full-time job probably.
Yeah. Can I just ask you?
And obviously that, you'd have to have somebody who's qualified with, obviously driving instructors are qualified.
Yeah, there'll be more training
how do you,
involved with the officer.
There will be an awful
added
lot of
cost.
training.
Yeah. I understand that. And can I ask you, as far as the knowledge test, I see there's 4 main areas. There's the driver policy and conditions, the local area knowledge, the numeracy assessment, and then the highway code, which you wouldn't touch because the safety side has to be paramount here. I just wondered, what areas are the drivers failing in, mainly on the knowledge test?
It's mainly on the safeguarding, disability awareness, that side of it's mainly on that proportion. But as you can see in there, we've put that the scores should be 18, 18, 10 and 5. We don't stick to that.
Yeah.
Because I have looked at some of the questions within the papers. It was written before I took on this role. And I do feel that some of the questions in there are quite ambiguous, even though they're multiple choice. When you actually read them, some of them, you could answer 2 of them. 2 of them could be slightly correct. They're a bit, what's that? Oh, yeah. They are a bit ambiguous, some of the questions. So I do think they do need looking at. So when the team when the guys whoever's done the knowledge test, they get the papers back, they mark them. If they feel that there's some that are, nearly there, they give me the papers and I will go through it. Like some last week, they got 16, 15, 10 and 5. And so we look at the questions and think, or if they've done it a couple of times or they've done it and they've really improved, it's like, oh, well, yeah, they're fine. But like with the highway code questions, one of them on there is the 20 mile an hour sign. 2 people last week ticked the option, that means only 20 cars can be in this area at any one time. There's only 5 highway code questions there.
The good thing there is that once they've been told the answer to that, they know it.
You hope so, yeah.
They won't get that wrong again.
But we won't, if they get questions wrong, we don't tell them the specific questions they've got wrong. We will say, you need improving in this area. You need improving in your the safeguarding side of things or the disability. We will tell them what areas they've failed in, but we obviously don't tell them what questions they've got wrong. We've got 3 papers, and obviously each paper has different questions. We try and make sure that each paper's not the same, so that each time they come, it's a different paper.
But that area is something that could be looked at and improved, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
And also, with driving licences for people who've obviously come over here from the EU, they can just transfer their licence to a British licence. There's no test, there's no theory, there's no nothing. So that doesn't always help either with their knowledge of the highway code and, everything else.
Sorry, we can't have questions from the public. You were notified of that. I just wanted to basically say, obviously, I've read through a lot of this. I've looked at Mr. Doody's examples of different ways of testing with different councils. I've looked at our councils. I've looked at what our council is doing currently, and asked the question: why isn't this standardised? Why are we sitting here at all? This should be standardised over the whole country. I was quite taken with the idea of the assessment centre, though, with the Worcestershire Council, because obviously our priority is to make sure that people are safe in the taxis, and I do think that if people are having a 6-hour course where they're going through all the safeguarding, the slavery, licence conditions, vehicle conditions, I added a few things as well that, you know, that they should be going through, in addition to, have you all looked at this, the Wolverhampton Council? There's a lot of information, I understand that, which is why my suggestion would be for this to be actually taken away by the licensing team and for them to have a look at all these different options, you know, and we talk about not reinventing the wheel. And if there is something that, like is cost effective, you know, even if we need to bring somebody else on part-time because, you know, like there's no price on people's safety. So that they can actually assess this, you know, look at which ones are the best so that people actually want to come to Thanet to do their taxi driving test, so that we can actually sort of like set an example, good example, or actually try and collaborate with maybe Wolverhampton Council and find out how they do it. And then the application fee wouldn't need to be paid for until after they completed the assessment day. But during that 6 hours, which maybe we could have somebody in-house doing, or we could outsource to maybe one of these training providers, we would have a very good idea whether these are proper fit people, you know, like to actually work for our taxi companies. Okay. All right. So yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I mean, has anybody else, you know, like had similar thoughts about the assessment centre, and whether they think that that's a good idea for us to be exploring as a council, so that we can ensure the safety of our community?
I agree with you, Chair. I think it's a good way forward. It's positive. Yeah, I think an in-house training course would be really good, or someone to do it as assessment. Yeah.
It was Councillor Potts first, and then Councillor Curry.
My only worry with that is it's going to take longer and longer to get this all in place, and I do think we are really lacking at the moment in this area with taxi drivers, and this area is suffering with a lack of taxi drivers, and I do trust the licensing team that they've been doing this job and know what the legalities are to steer us proper in that respect. It's my only thoughts.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I mean, obviously this isn't going to be something that's done overnight, so obviously, you know, we'd have to look at an interim solution, but I'm just talking about, you know, actually looking at this, you know, getting somebody on board now to start looking at it and reassessing our assessment process. Councillor Curry?
Yeah, just wanted to mention as well for anybody who wasn't aware that drivers could go to Wolverhampton and take the test there, which, because it's
Okay.
may be cheaper, but the fact that they can do that is...
Councillor Brook has got a response to that about going to Wolverhampton. Sorry, are you running, are you?
If they do that, it's basically called the Trinity of licences. If a driver goes and gets licensed by Wolverhampton, their vehicle has to be and the operator has to be. All three would have to be licensed with Wolverhampton. And obviously if that happens, we have no control over that vehicle or that driver, because any complaints that may come in from the local area, they would have to be directed to Wolverhampton.
Councillor Huxley.
In the old days, the good old days, you couldn't, if you were a private hire vehicle operator or a taxi driver, you couldn't work outside of your local area, as in Thanet. So the government changed the law.
Alison.
We currently have, just a bit of info, 391 licensed private hire drivers, and we've got 7 that are currently going through their renewal process. And so far this year, we've licensed 9 new ones. obviously with the licensing officers, they do spot checks on drivers. So we do keep an eye on them. But there was recently, last year, there was an issue between two drivers, and we ended up speaking to them both. And one of the drivers told us he was working for an operator. We contacted that operator, hadn't worked for him for months. We contacted other operators, never heard of the guy. So we ended up taking his plate and his badge off of him because he couldn't tell us who he was working for. So why was he driving around with that plate and that badge if he wasn't actually working for anybody? And we took it off of him and we said, once you can say, you know, you're going to work for United, Show, whatever, we'll let you have it back. He's never come back to us. Quite a few of them, they do Just Eat work. They visualed the vehicle last week. He opened the boot, there's his Just Eat bag in the back.
So if this is an internal board meeting for discussion. All right. Oh, okay. I thought it was supposed to. It said in the notes that it wasn't public.
Oh, yeah, which means no public speaking at all. Because it's so.
Right. Okay. Knowledge. Sorry. Okay. All right. Okay. Obviously, you know, right, like we are here today to discuss the knowledge test. And if there needs to be any changes to that knowledge test. Now, as you know, like as you know, I was talking about, I think we need to have a complete reassessment of it, a reassessment to see if we need an assessment centre. In the interim, though, I don't know if that we want to make any changes as regards to the online component of this, whether that should be done in-house so that we know it's actually done by the person. As something that we could actually ask to be looked at straight away.
Obviously, we'd have to have someone who's fully trained in the safeguarding side of things. There may be officers, they are officers within the authority that are safeguarding, but they don't work for our department, so obviously it's whether they've got the time or whatever to be able to pass that over. Of course, the other option is to do the slightly more expensive £25 course, which is done online, but obviously they have to prove who they are with their picture, and they have to sit there in sort of a classroom, more of a classroom type of course, rather than just answering questions on a slides.
Councillor Pott.
I agree. I think it should only be done in front, because you need to prove your ability to work in this country, your driving licence and everything else that goes with becoming a taxi driver. And I think they should just all be done in-house. You can have as many sittings as you've got the time to do. So I can't see a problem. And if somebody wants to become a taxi driver, I would happily pay £25 to sit a course, happily.
The course I'm talking about, the £25 one, it's still done online. It's still done online. It's the Blue Lamp one that is still done online, but it's like a Teams meeting, so the trainer can see everybody's faces and can see who's actually doing it, which is unlike the current online one.
Right, yeah, I'm with you now. So, but they still have to come in for the rest. That's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Curry?
Yeah, and I think in the short term, can we look at 3.2, make changes to the test, lower the pass rate, or split the test into a longer Hackney driver test, more local knowledge, and a private hire driver test with less local knowledge, and review all the questions. I think that's what we've discussed as well.
Councillor Huxley?
Thanks, Chair. And then in the long term, 3.3, so employing a member of staff to train all aspects of the test. Have an internal review, as you were talking about, as a long-term solution. Thanks.
I mean, so in the short term, we could actually have it as the £25 test where it's like verifiable, and we also talked about maybe lowering the price of the second if they fail the first time. So it's £40 the first time, but maybe lower it when they come back the second time. As I say, I'm just talking about an interim period while you're assessing the whole thing. I don't know, because at the moment, if they fail, they have to come back and pay the £40 again, don't they? I mean, what do other people think about if you fail the test the first time and when you come back, you're at a reduced rate?
I think that's fine. That's what should happen. Obviously, they come back because they really want to do this. So, you know, but to charge them the same, I think it should be cut down, definitely. Yeah.
Councillor Schwab?
Yeah, when do you do the meetings where they come in and do the tests? Is it daytime?
Yeah, it's fortnightly, 10 o'clock? 10 o'clock.
Because I have had a couple of people say to me they haven't bothered to come back after they didn't pass the first time because they work all day, every day. Would you consider doing once every so often an evening one?
No one's actually come to us. No one's ever said to us, I can't do that. They may say it to other people, but no one's actually ever come to us and said, we can't do it during the day. So if there are people who can't do it during the day, then we could look at maybe once a month doing an evening course, doing an evening knowledge. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I'll let them know because that would probably help get a few more in.
Okay, so do we have an idea of what we would reduce the price to on the second time round?
Half price?
So we're saying £40 first time and then 20.
It's 41 currently. first time.
£41
Yeah,
first time.
we kept it. We didn't up it with everything.
Okay, and then up £20 the second time? Yeah. What, and then half again the third time? Okay, so £20 for repeat tests then? And add an evening course once a month. Okay. And there was something that you said, Councillor Potts, wasn't there something else?
About possibly having another tier for school drivers only, and also an international DBS. Obviously at the driver's expense.
International criminal check, yeah. So things that we can do immediately are the £25 online test where they have to produce their proper ID, and is to have the evening course as well, and reduce the second one to £20, resets to £20. And then things like what you said, Councillor Potts, they'll have to go in the overall review. Councillor Curry.
And can the officers look at 3.2 as we've discussed?
Are you talking about lowering the pass rate? So can you?
This would be 3.2, a longer Hackney driver test with more local and touristy knowledge, and a private hire driver test with less local knowledge, and to review all the questions.
Yes, so to put that in as part of the whole review when they're looking at changing it over to maybe more of an assessment day format. Yeah, so that they would be different. The questions would be different. It's about finding the best way, the best structure, and best way forward. Looking at all the other models, or actually approaching external training providers.
I was just going to say, really, with regard to Hackney's, obviously, there's a few things that are different. I mean, obviously with safeguarding disability and everything, that's all the same. you've got obviously a taxi a taxi, a Hackney carriage, comply for hire, whereas a private hire vehicle can't. But some of the drivers don't know the difference still. You know, we've asked a private hire driver about that, and he's like, what's applying for hire? So they should still really know each other's, what each other can and can't do. But I think the Hackneys should have more of local knowledge or routes A to B. You know, how do you get from A to B? What's the shortest route from there? So, but I do think they do need to know what each other can and can't do, because they do get that confused still sometimes.
So, and I just want to add to that, that obviously Hackney carriages can work private hire. So they can work for an operator. So if you're just asking them to just do the Hackney carriage knowledge test, there could be a falling in there because they can work private hire.
So I just want to recap to where we're up to then. 40 down to 20, second pass, evening course, online £25 with ID. That's for now, and the licensing department will conduct a full analysis of their current testing structure and look at different assessment centres, etc., and then bring that back to the committee. Yeah, okay. We'd need a time frame on that, I guess. What do you think a reasonable time frame would be, Alison?
Yeah, you won't have anything booked in yet, will you, Stephen, for July? June, July? No, not yet, no. But what honestly, there is a lot of information to look at. I mean, what reasonably do you think? I mean, is June reasonable, or or would you need another month? We know much. June or July. I mean, obviously, we're also looking at, I know you guys probably saw it before, the actual policy, the private hire and Hackney policy. It was originally went out pre-COVID. So that's all being looked at again, because there's been quite a lot of other changes within government again with legislation of what we can and can't do and everything. So that's being revised at the moment, and we're hoping to bring that to board in June. So that'll be quite a major thing for whoever's on board at that time to look at. But obviously within part of that will be what the knowledge test consists of. So we can try and look at the two going along together. So hopefully by yeah.
Does anybody have any more questions for Alison? Councillor Curry.
Yeah, just one more. I was mentioning 3.2. It's just not to conflute the situation. Looking at 3.4, change the test to include a driver assessment course. Would it be possible to incorporate parts of the 3.2 option into 3.4? So I noticed that the 3.4 option would be online classroom course for safeguarding, both paid for, and a shortened in-house knowledge test. Would you be able to sort of marry the two?
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Which one would try the other one?
That 3.4 is talking about a different type of assessment test to what you've been talking about. 3.4 is talking about there's a driver assessment course that Blue Lamp and Blue Penny do, which are between £70 and £80. So that's a totally different driver course. That's like assessing their driving. So you could have that, and then you could have the online safeguarding course that you're talking about, the £25 one. and then we could still do a shortened knowledge test in-house, just as we do now. Or if you want to go down the full in-house training route, obviously the driver assessment course wouldn't necessarily be part of it, because that means someone having to go with the driver to assess their driving. So it like I say, it is a total minefield. Every council does something different, and it would be so good if if the government just said, this is what they've got to do, that's the end of it. But, you know, they don't.
Are we agreed on what we're doing? Yeah. So we're going to have a full, the licensing team are going to do a full reassessment of their testing procedure, and look at these in-house assessments, so that we can get a clear idea of these people that are going through our system and that are going to be trained to become, or going to become our taxi drivers, basically, passing these tests. So that's why I was asking if you'd all looked at, you know, things like the Worcestershire, you know, the Wolverhampton model. And then they would apply for the application form after that, once they've passed. I mean, this is a 75% pass, 75% they need to achieve in the exam at the end of the day. But I mean, but you'd look at that. But in the interim, we can make those other changes that we talked about that can be done immediately. Yes, so those changes being the £40 the first time round, £20 second time round, evening course once a month, and immediately putting that online £25 course as part of the test procedure at the moment.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're going to bring it back in at the end of June, aren't you? Yeah. Yeah. Proposer? Councillor Schropp? Seconder, Councillor Saunders. Okay, is that it? Does everyone agree?
Yeah.
Everyone agrees? That's great. Thank you. Then I think that concludes the meeting. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.